The Bruins bonanza, Cam Neely from the Canucks. On June 6, 1986, the Vancouver Canucks traded Cam Neely and a first-round pick, which became Glenn Wesley, to the Boston Bruins for Barry Peterson. This deal stands as one of the most lopsided in NHL history. Neely, who was just 21 at the time, had shown flashes of potential in Vancouver but hadn't yet broken out as a star. Peterson had scored 116 points for the Bruins in 1983-84 but had seen his production decline after a shoulder injury. In Boston, Neely developed into one of the most feared power forwards in NHL history. He scored 50-plus goals 3 times, despite battling injuries throughout his career. His combination of scoring touch and physical play made him a beloved figure in Boston and earned him a place in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Peterson played just 3 seasons in Vancouver, never scoring more than 24 goals or 71 points before being traded again. The first-round pick the Canucks gave up became Wesley, who played 7 solid seasons with Boston before being traded for 3 first-round picks, giving the Bruins even more value from the original deal. This trade is a perfect example of a team giving up on a young player too soon. The Canucks didn't have the patience to develop Neely, and it cost them a future Hall of Famer. For Bruins fans, the mere mention of this trade still brings smiles, while Canucks supporters can only wonder what might have been if they'd kept Neely in Vancouver. The Canadiens' catastrophe, the Scott Gomez trade. On June 30, 2009, the Montreal Canadiens made one of the most regrettable trades in their storied history. They acquired Scott Gomez, Tom Pyatt, and Michael Busto from the New York Rangers for Christopher Higgins, Ryan McDonough, Pavel Valentenko, and Doug Janik. The centerpiece of the deal was Gomez, a former Calder Trophy winner who had signed a massive 7-year, $51.5 million contract with the Rangers. His production had declined in New York, but the Canadiens hoped a change of scenery would revitalize his career. Instead, Gomez's offensive numbers continued to plummet in Montreal. In his second season with the Canadiens, he infamously went over a full calendar year without scoring a goal. The Canadiens eventually bought out his contract after the 2012-13 lockout. The true disaster of this trade, however, was giving up McDonough. The young defenseman developed into one of the NHL's best two-way blue liners with the Rangers, serving as their captain and leading them to the 2014 Stanley Cup Final. He later won 2 Stanley Cups with the Tampa Bay Lightning, proving himself to be an elite defenseman. This trade serves as a cautionary tale about taking on massive contracts and giving up promising young players in the process. The Canadiens essentially paid a premium, McDonough, to acquire a negative asset, Gomez's contract. The Flames' gamble, Matthew Tkachuk to the Panthers. Sometimes even trades that bring back substantial returns can be considered losses when you give up a generational talent. That's the case with the July 2022 blockbuster that sent Matthew Tkachuk from the Calgary Flames to the Florida Panthers. The Flames received Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, prospect Cole Schwindt, and a first-round pick in return for Tkachuk and a fourth-round pick. On paper, this looked like a massive haul. Huberdeau was coming off a 115-point season, and Weegar was a top-4 defenseman. But Tkachuk's immediate impact in Florida was undeniable. In his first season with the Panthers, he recorded 109 points and helped lead them to the Stanley Cup Final. His unique combination of skill, scoring touch, and physical edge made him an instant fan favorite and a cornerstone player at just 24 years old. Meanwhile, Huberdeau struggled in his first season in Calgary, seeing his production drop by nearly 60 points. While it's still too early to definitively label this trade a disaster for the Flames, the early returns suggest they may have traded away a franchise player entering his prime for a package that won't match his long-term value. This trade highlights the risk of moving a young star player, even when the return appears substantial on paper. The Flyers' folly, Patrick Sharp to the Blackhawks. Sometimes the worst trades aren't the blockbusters, but the seemingly minor deals that come back to haunt teams. That's exactly what happened when the Philadelphia Flyers traded Patrick Sharp and Eric Meloche to the Chicago Blackhawks for Matt Ellison and a third-round pick in December 2005. Sharp was a young forward who had shown flashes of potential, but hadn't secured a regular role with the Flyers. In Chicago, he blossomed into a star, becoming a key piece of the Blackhawks dynasty that won 3 Stanley Cups between 2010 and 2015. Sharp scored 30-plus goals 4 times with Chicago and developed into one of the league's most reliable two-way forwards. He was particularly clutch in the playoffs, recording 80 points in 117 postseason games with the Blackhawks. Ellison, meanwhile, played just 7 games for the Flyers before disappearing from the NHL entirely. The third-round pick never materialized into a significant player. This trade exemplifies the danger of giving up on young players too quickly. The Flyers didn't have the patience to develop Sharp, and it cost them a player who would become a multiple Stanley Cup champion and an integral part of a modern dynasty. The Maple Leafs mistake: Tuukka Rask for Andrew Raycroft. On June 24, 2006, the Toronto Maple Leafs made a trade that would haunt them for over a decade. They sent the rights to goaltending prospect Tuukka Rask to the Boston Bruins for goaltender Andrew Raycroft. Rask was Toronto's first-round pick in 2005 but had yet to come to North America. Raycroft was just 2 years removed from winning the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year, but had struggled in the 2005 to 2006 season. The Maple Leafs hoped Raycroft would bounce back and become their franchise goaltender. Instead, he played just 2 mediocre seasons in Toronto before moving on. Rask, meanwhile, developed into one of the NHL's premier goaltenders in Boston. Over his 15-year career with the Bruins, Rask won a Stanley Cup, a Vezina Trophy as the league's best goaltender, and set numerous franchise records. He finished with a career .921 save percentage, one of the best in NHL history. During this period, the Maple Leafs cycled through dozens of goaltenders trying to find stability in net, while watching the goalie they traded away excel for a division rival. This trade stands as one of the most lopsided goaltender trades in NHL history, and a prime example of a team giving up on a prospect before giving him a chance to develop. The Flames' failure: Jean-Sébastien Giguère to the Ducks. In a trade that received little attention at the time but proved disastrous in hindsight, the Calgary Flames traded goaltender Jean-Sébastien Giguère to the Anaheim Mighty Ducks for a second-round draft pick in June 2000. Giguère had played just 8 games for the Flames after being acquired from Hartford. The Flames, who had Miikka Kiprusoff emerging as their starter, didn't see Giguère as part of their future plans. In Anaheim, Giguère developed into one of the NHL's best goaltenders. His performance in the 2003 playoffs was legendary. He won the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP despite the Ducks losing in the Stanley Cup Final, becoming just the 5th player from a losing team to earn that honor. 4 years later, Giguère backstopped the Ducks to their first Stanley Cup championship in 2007. His butterfly style and calm demeanor under pressure made him one of the most reliable playoff goaltenders of his era. The second-round pick the Flames received never made an impact in the NHL, making this another example of a team giving up on a young player too soon. While the Flames did find success with Kiprusoff, having both goaltenders would have given them incredible depth at the position. The Blue Jackets blunder: Jeff Carter to the Kings. Sometimes trades go wrong because a player simply doesn't want to be where he's been traded. That's what happened with Jeff Carter and the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets acquired Carter from Philadelphia in June 2011, hoping he would become their first-line center. Carter was unhappy with the trade from the start and never embraced Columbus. After just 39 games with the Blue Jackets, they traded him to the Los Angeles Kings for Jack Johnson and a first-round pick in February 2012. What happened next was a disaster for Columbus. Carter immediately found his game in Los Angeles, helping the Kings win the Stanley Cup just months after the trade. He would win another cup with Los Angeles in 2014, scoring 10 goals in each of those championship runs. Johnson had some productive seasons in Columbus, but never developed into the elite defenseman many projected him to be. The first-round pick, Marco Dano, had a brief NHL career, but never became an impact player. This trade shows the risk of acquiring a player who doesn't want to play for your team, and then compounding the error by trading him away for less than full value. The Blue Jackets essentially helped build the Kings' championship teams while getting little in return. The Capitals' catastrophe: Filip Forsberg to the Predators. At the 2013 trade deadline, the Washington Capitals made a move they're still trying to live down. They traded prospect Filip Forsberg to the Nashville Predators for Martin Erat and Michael Latta. Forsberg was the Capitals' first-round pick, 11th overall in 2012, but had yet to play in North America. Erat was a veteran winger, who the Capitals hoped would help them in the playoffs. The results were disastrous. Erat scored just 2 goals in 62 games with Washington before being traded again. Latta played 113 games for the Capitals as a fourth-liner before leaving the organization. Forsberg, meanwhile, developed into a star in Nashville. He scored 30-plus goals 6 times for the Predators, becoming their franchise leader in goals and one of their most consistent offensive threats. His combination of size, skill, and scoring touch made him exactly the type of player the Capitals could have used alongside Alex Ovechkin and Nicklas Backstrom. This trade is often cited as one of the worst deadline deals in NHL history, a classic case of a team sacrificing long-term potential for short-term gain, only to miss out on both. The Islanders' double disaster, Roberto Luongo and Olli Jokinen trade. On June 24, 2000, the New York Islanders made a trade that would set their franchise back years. They sent Roberto Luongo and Olli Jokinen to the Florida Panthers for Mark Parrish and Oleg Kvasha. Luongo was the Islanders' first-round pick, 4th overall in 1997, and had shown promise in his rookie season. Jokinen was the 3rd overall pick in 1997 by Los Angeles, but hadn't yet established himself as an NHL regular. The Islanders made this trade because they planned to select goaltender Rick DiPietro with the 1st overall pick in the 2000 draft, making Luongo expendable in their eyes. It was a decision that would haunt them for years. Luongo developed into one of the best goaltenders of his generation, first with Florida and then with Vancouver. He finished his career with 489 wins, second most in NHL history at the time of his retirement. Jokinen became a consistent 30-goal scorer with the Panthers, serving as their captain and leading scorer for several seasons. Parrish and Kvasha were solid players for the Islanders, but nowhere near the caliber of the players they gave up. To make matters worse, DiPietro's career was derailed by injuries after the Islanders signed him to a 15-year contract. This trade, combined with the DiPietro selection and contract, represents one of the worst sequences of decisions by any NHL front office. The Islanders essentially traded away a future Hall of Fame goaltender and a top-line center for 2 middle-six forwards.